who's a senior consulting fellow with the Middle East and North Africa programme at Chatham House, and he's in London on the line for us. Welcome to you, Yossi. Let's start with that report that has just come in the last 24 hours. Almost 600 former Israeli security officials signing a letter. They're calling on President Trump to vicariously put pressure on Netanyahu to end the war. Now, their position is Hamas is no longer a threat, they say, to Israel. So, with all that expert opinion claiming that there is no threat anymore from Hamas, why doesn't Netanyahu listen to them, do a deal and get the hostages back?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I think the answer is becoming more and more apparent for months now, that Netanyahu, in order to stay in power, in order to deal with his corruption trial, he needs to stay in government. It's the only way for him to derail at one point or another, to sabotage the trial. Today, the Israeli government voted basically to terminate the term of the Attorney General, who is also the head of the prosecution. And to do that, he needs the extreme right wing, the ultra-nationalist, messianic settlers in government, and they keep putting pressure on him to keep the war going. And until, what they call the absolute victory, the total elimination of Hamas. But 22 months into this, we see that Israel is dragged more and more into the war. The humanitarian disaster in Gaza is for everyone to see. And Israel's reputation in the world is in all-time low. And I think what needs to be done is to listen to this letter. The accumulated experience of this roughly 600 signatories is many thousands of years of experience in security. They know what they are talking about.
That's a desperately sad thought, as you suggested, that the Prime Minister might be just doing everything that we're seeing just to stay in power. It means tens of thousands of people are dying in the process. But the fact that Israel's deliberately employed starvation as a weapon, that's according to the UN and aid agencies. Could this mean that Netanyahu finds trouble for himself, maybe not now, but further down the road? Could we see tribunals trying him for war crimes at some point later on?
I think the most important thing, first and foremost, is to end the humanitarian disaster. I mean, at one point or another, yes, I mean, there is already an ICC arrest warrant in front of the ICJ deliberation whether the case, what's happening in Gaza is genocide or not. So the legal proceedings and procedures will go on for probably 4 years. But this is not going to save any single Palestinians right now that starves or need medical attention. And the most important thing is to ensuring that there are more trucks of humanitarian aid are entering, more doctors and other medical staff personnel entering inside Gaza, and the war comes to an end. And it's not surprised that the letter was not written to Netanyahu. The letter by these 600 security people was written to President Trump because they don't trust Netanyahu. They know that, as you say, it's a very sad reality that all what Netanyahu cares is about staying in power and probably not going to jail. But they also know that the only person right now that can stop it and stop it immediately is President Trump.
Yossi, I mean, the fact that you mentioned that Donald Trump is clearly seen as the man who can leverage Netanyahu into changing his course of action. Yesterday, Donald Trump said that the US wanted Palestinians in Gaza to be fed. And he clearly has the power to make that happen. Why doesn't Trump tell Netanyahu to stop the blockade and let aid trucks into Gaza?
I must admit, second-guessing Trump is not an easy thing. And between what he says and Iraq, there is not always a clear correlation. We just hope that, between what he says, he will proceed and also make sure that Netanyahu understands that there are repercussions if he doesn't do that. And we saw last week that to a certain extent, after some pressure, not only from the United States, also from Europe, the recognition in Palestinian statehood by a number of European countries and Canada, there was some movement in allowing at least airdrops of humanitarian aid, but we all know it's not enough. It's a drop in the ocean. But in order to leverage it, and the United States has the leverage to do that, it needs to send a clear message that unless Israel is allowing humanitarian aid to enter into Gaza in the satisfying or sufficient quantities, they can leverage, whether it's diplomatically in the Security Councils in terms of military supply, and when it comes to trade agreements, there is huge, wide range of leverage, of issues that the United States can use in order to pressurize Israel.
Yossi, it was great to speak to you. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on. Yossi Mekelberg is my guest. He's a senior consulting fellow at Chatham House in London.